Live from our studios in Kingstown, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. It's your favorite Thursday night show, Up Late with Sion Marshall. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the host of tonight's show, Sion Marshall.
Welcome again and good night. Thank you so much for joining this first indie relaunch because we've been off for a little while of your favorite Thursday evening show, Up Late with Sion Marshall. I'm your host, Sion Marshall. And please tell me you like that new intro because I like it. All right. That was done by a very good friend of mine, and I really love it. And I thank him very much for that intro. Now, remember, tonight we have a very special guest. Our special guest is already in studio, and very soon we'll be chatting with our guest. And I promise you, it is going to be an exciting evening. But just a few housekeeping matters. Like I said, our program has been off the air for a few months. As you know, I was out of state. I was not in St. Vincent and Grenadines for just over a year, 14 months or thereabout. And the reason, for those who may not have known, was that I went back to law school. So I went to the UK to undertake the bar. And thankfully, and by the grace of God, as we say as Christians, I was able to successfully complete the bar. Now, I want to thank a number of individuals, but I'm not going to call any names at all, of individuals who were there for me and who supported me, encouraged me, loved me throughout the entire process. And I thank you because without your support, your love, your strength, I wouldn't have made it. From family to really good friends, I thank you for your support. So now I'm back. And as is the reference in the UK, I am what they would refer to as a pupil barrister. So I am back already. And yes, for those of you who are wondering, I'm no longer press secretary. I left the job before I went to the UK as press secretary of at the office of the prime minister. So now I'm back, and I'm actually engaged in private in the practice of private law, and you'll hear more about that as time goes by. So for those of you who have your legal issues, listen, give me a call me. Yeah, I mean, we'll work on something, right? But that is where things are. And like I said, I thank all those individuals who supported me throughout that entire process. So tonight well, I did mention to you that because of exams and a number of other personal issues, I decided to take a break from the program. And so our program has been off the air since January of this year. And I promised you that I'll be back by February, but I wasn't back by February because a number of things happened. I did some traveling. I had a conference. I did a few things. I actually came home for a couple of weeks and went back to the UK. So a number of things happened why there wasn't a relaunch in February. But it's April, sorry, and we are relaunching our program tonight. And I'll tell you, in March, we celebrated a year since the relaunching of it last year, and it's the longest that we've been on air consistently and continuously. And so I'm grateful for that, and I'm thankful, sorry, for all those individuals who supported our program throughout this period and continue to support us. I'm going to endeavor to bring you great content that would edify you, that would inform you, and of course that would entertain you because it's one of those programs that's educational, informative, but also entertaining. All right. So that's where we are. Oh, by the way, I have like a whole studio crew and thing now because people behind the laptops are going to stand, click, 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 laptop because, I mean, people, listen, we expanding. Right. Hopefully with Seattle Marshall is happening and we're growing, right? So wait, why am I going to, because I know a bunch of people could be saying good night and so on, and I haven't said any good night. So let me get to my yeah, somebody said good evening. I know that we go loud. But yeah, oh by the way, I need a shave. I need a shave. You're not supposed to laugh behind the camera. You just leave it at that. Right. All right. So it's time for me to bring our guests into the studio. Like I said, this evening rather, we have a very special, exciting guest with us. This individual, to me, can attain legendary status here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines because he has done so much in putting St. Vincent and the Grenadines on the map through sports and specifically through the sport of football. This evening, ladies and gentlemen, I speak of no other than former captain of Vincy Heat, Team SVG's football team, and now the head coach of that team, Mr. Ezra Paul Hendrickson, as his name is on Facebook. Let's welcome Ezra to Uplate. Ezra, welcome and good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Thanks for having me on here, and I'm very happy to be here. Good night to
Not
everyone.
as happy as I am, to be quite frankly, because I'm hosting people of legendary status as far as I'm concerned. And I want us to have a discussion of where things started, where and how we ended up where we are. But I think I told you this funny story already, but I'm gonna tell it to you now on air because I want to remind individuals of this. Now, I lived in New York for a little while, and while I was there, I supported NYCFC. So I followed the Eastern Conference quite well. I actually was a season ticket holder. But before that, I know that you played football as well up there, and we'll get into that part. I won't give it too much of that. So I came home and I'm still following. And I remember you were assistant coach of, I believe, your former club, but you'll correct me if I'm wrong. Of the one, I think one of the junior teams or something. We'll get into that. And then I heard Ezra is going to be named head coach of Chicago Fire. Now, of course, I start with Chicago because it's a Vincy man and so on, but I can't back you, especially when they play in NYCFC because that's my team, right?
Right.
But that's all right.
Makes sense.
And then, I'm following the season and I realized that, the team is floundering, but you didn't get a good team anyway. You didn't get a good hand. So you did the best with the hand that you dealt. And I remember saying to Denny on radio one morning, which is the co-host of a program I did on Star Radio, I said, loud, on open mic, I said, the FN needs to oil the phone to call Ezra because at the rate Chicago going and the way I know these football managers' jobs are, he getting sacked. And so as soon as he's sacked, call him. I swear to God. 2 months afterwards, he coach of SVG. I kid you not. So it's not that I prayed for your sacking, but I prayed for you to come home because I was very aware of the work that you were doing, what you can do for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I'm really, really happy that finally you are home with the team, and from what I've seen so far, you're doing really fantastic thing. How are you feeling though, Ezra? I mean, we're going to start here and go back, but how are you feeling as head coach? What did you feel when you got that call that your national team, the team that you played for and represented, wanted you to be the head coach?
Well, it was an honor for me. I think if you look at me as a player and someone who was the original 100% Vincy, I think coming back and coaching St. Vincent and the Grenadines was always something that was in the works. However, after my Chicago gig, the then president, Mr. Dixon, they had contacted me about joining the team, but I was still under contract with Chicago and I had another, I think, 16 to 18 months on my contract that I couldn't really get away from. There's it would be a big financial loss for myself to do it at the time, but it was something that I always wanted to do. So when I was able to, when my contract was officially finished, by then the new federation was in office, and we met in Grenada. I was doing a Legends game with some of the greatest players around the world, and the president, the first vice president, came over and we met and we talked about the possibilities, and I told him what it would take for me to join the team as head coach. And it wasn't so much financial because I know it's St. Vincent and Grenadines. It's finance wouldn't be the sticking point, but I wanted to have things in place that would make my job easy and that would make it possible for me to do what I felt like I could do with the players that we have currently in St. Vincent. Because I always watched the games. Every time Vincy Heat played, I always watched, and I saw there was a lot of talent there, but we just never could put it together on the pitch, and I felt that with my expertise and what I've gathered throughout the years as a player and as assistant coach, and also as a head coach in Chicago, that I could come in and make a difference. So once we sat down and we talked, and they realized that what it would take to get me there, how the type of professionalism it would need to be for me to be a part of something like that type of project. It was a no-brainer for me. St. Vincent is my home, and I always wanted to, like I said, come back and do my part as a coach to help develop the game and help put St. Vincent back on the map, because we're a nation that's very small, but we've always had very good footballers. And it hasn't been since back when I played in '96. Not to age myself or anything, but it hasn't been since then, since we made it to the Gold Cup. And I think these are goals that, as a nation, we should always set as goals, because I think it's things that we can achieve. We came up short this year, but it's the progress has been great, and I think we're on the right track to, as I said, put Vincy football back on the map.
All right, Ezra. No, I like what I saw. I was home in time for the Jamaica match, the first leg, but I was unable to attend that match. However, let's go back to where it all began. At what point did you realize that football was where your passion was? I mean, you have height, and so if I were your parents, I would be thinking cricket. You know what I mean? A nice fast bowler, cricket. At what point did it dawn on you that, listen, football is where the passion is?
Well, growing up in Layu, I kind of did both things as a youth. I left Layu at the age of 13. But before then, before I left and came to the States, I played both cricket and football. But for some reason, football was always, my go-to sport, the one that I really had passion for. Like you said, my teachers, even at St. Martin's, would tell me that, I could be a good fast bowler, I could be a good cricketer, but for some reason, football was always my go-to sport, the one that I was really, really passionate about. So once I came to the States, and then I was able to play organized football and started to excel, I realized that this was going to be the thing that I'm going to do for a living, so to speak. But at the time, my high school didn't have a soccer team, so it's difficult to get into college and into university, if you're not playing, high school football, soccer, as they call it here. So, that was in itself could have been an obstacle, but, I could tell you a story about how I came about getting a scholarship to go to university to play soccer, not having a high school team. It was sort of a miracle. So I think, the higher powers above had this path, this destiny set for me, and I think I just followed it and used the talents that were bestowed upon me by the Most High.
So you did recognize at the early age, although you played both sports, that is probably where you wanted to go. Now I'll say this, and thank you for letting me know that now that I know we are kindred, my respect for you goes even higher because you're a St. Martin's boy. So listen, we bonded through and through, right?
Yes.
um, but so you played some football here at, I guess, primary and secondary school, and then you went to the US to live. How was that adjustment though, coming from a small island, coming from Leyu, and going to the US? What was that adjustment like for a young Ezra Hendrickson?
Well, it was very difficult for me at first. Major culture shock, just the food, the weather, just the surroundings, the people, everything was different. And you got to understand, I'm coming from a small little fishing village of Leyu in mid '80s, and once I got to the States, I was exposed to a lot of things that I had never even seen before. So it was a bit of adjustment for me, but I was 13 years old, and as a kid, once you start making friends and hanging out, and you get a little bicycle and you're riding around the neighborhood with your friends, it became easier for me. But for the first 6 months or so, it was difficult. And then the weather. I mean, that was
Mm.
a big thing for me. It took me a while to get used to just being in cold weather. And I came to Indiana too, which is in the Midwest, and it's really, really cold there. So that took some getting used to.
Mm. But eventually you did. You said that your high school at the time didn't play soccer, as they call it there. So, how were you able to hone your craft as a youngster, as a teenager, to be able to then go on to play professional football in the MLS?
Well, it's interesting because so no high school soccer team. I played like on a men's team with my dad and his and my uncles and his friends and stuff like that. I was 14, and then I got into high school and just played like in a little travel team, but no high school team. So no way of coaches in colleges to get to see you play. But Indiana University was a big soccer school at the time, still is, and they had every summer they had a camp, a soccer camp for a week where you pay your money, you go there for a week, and there'll be some college coaches there coaching and stuff and scouting and hopefully if you do well, you may possibly get a scholarship. So, at the time it was difficult for me because my parents just didn't have the money to send me to that thing, but somehow they came up with the money and I went and I had a very, very good week. At the time, I played professionally as a defender, but at the time I was playing striker. So I had a very good week, scored some goals, and from that, the coach of Drake University, Bob Wood, who has since passed on, took a chance um, and gave me a full ride scholarship to Drake University, which is in Des Moines, Iowa. And so I went there, played for 4 years, three of those years as a striker, and then my senior year I switched to uh, defender. So it was by chance, or maybe it was my destiny, as I said, that I was able to go to that camp, was able to do well, and from that got a full ride 4 year scholarship to go to university. So I must say that I've been blessed. I've been fortunate. I have a mother that to this day still prays for me every day. So I know I'm in good hands.
Sorry, there I had a bit of a glitch there while you were talking, so I had a bit of a technical issue. I was hearing you well, and everybody heard you, but I was kind
Okay.
of distracted there. So my apologies for that. But one of the things that you mentioned does indicate, like, we know parents will do whatever needs to be done to ensure that they provide the best opportunities for the children, and your parents are no different. So they found the money, they sent you, and you had a really good week. uh, so what was the journey like to uh, I think it's LA Galaxy, that was your first team?
No, New York actually used to be the Metro Stars at the time. The New York, New
Metro
Jersey
Stars.
Metro
So you
Stars.
you
Yes.
how did that happen?
So I graduated from college, and again, I'm going to age myself in '94. And at the time, the MLS hadn't started yet. That was actually the year that the World Cup was last in the U.S. Um, Brazil won that year, and there was a scout that scouted one of my college games, and he wanted to take me to Brazil. So I went to Brazil right after that because there was no professional league in the States. So I played in Brazil it just lasted about 3 months, and it just didn't work out for me there. So I came back, and then I played in the lower leagues in '95 and '96, and I actually joined Vincy Heat in '95. That was my first year representing St. Vincent. And then in '96, the MLS started. At the time, they were only allowing five foreign players in. So, and I didn't have my citizenship at the time, so I went, got my citizenship, and became a U.S. citizen. In '96, in the league I was playing, the USL at the time, I became the defender of the year, and then from then I got drafted um, by New York, New Jersey Metro Stars. I don't know if you remember. I'm sure you remember Roberto Donadoni, great
Yes.
Italian player, AC
Right.
Milan player. He hand selected me. He was playing for the Metro Stars at the time, and I was told by the coach, who was the Brazilian coach from the '94 World Cup, Carlos Alberto Pereira, that Donadoni handpicked me to join the team. So that in itself made me proud because he's someone that as a boy you grew up watching play. So um, there was a combine and they were there watching and stuff, and I got drafted fifth overall in that draft in '97, and I joined the New York, New Jersey Metro Stars.
No, no, fifth overall is a pretty decent number to be drafted. Um, and you said by that time you had already been called up for St. Vincent and the Grenadines by the time you got drafted.
Yes.
Um, your first game for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because you had left a few years ago as a teenager. Now you're coming back. No doubt, you knew some of the guys because maybe your younger friends and so forth. But what was that like coming back to represent St. Vincent and the Grenadines at the time that you did? And maybe as you answer that, you can give us an idea of what the state of football was at that time. So whether or not you felt any pressure coming back to St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Yeah. So again, another interesting story how that even became to how that even happened for me. So and I always I grew up in the church, and I know that I couldn't have accomplished any of the things that I've accomplished in my life if it wasn't for God. So I'm playing in New Orleans at the time. We were playing in Dallas. I was playing with the New Orleans team, and I was playing. I had a good game, and someone was in the stands because I hadn't been back to St. Vincent since I left as a 13-year-old boy, and now I'm 23. I'm playing semi-pro, and someone in the stands came up to me, and after the game, it was like, "Are you Jamaican?" I'm like, "No, I'm Vincy." And he's like, "No way." He's like, "I know the coach of St. Vincent. Do you know anyone there? Do you play for Vincy?" I said, "No, I haven't been back. I've been away for 10 years. I don't, I know I have a brother that's on the team, but I haven't been back to St. Vincent, so I don't know anyone there." So he's like, took my contact and he called Lenny Taylor at the time, who was the coach, who was his friend. And so Lenny brought me in to St. Vincent to play. That was my first, that's how I even became a part of Vincy Heat. So, but, people didn't know me and no one knew who this Ezra Hendrickson person was. When I left, my name was Ezra Jeffers. But when I came to the States, I switched to my father's last name, which is Hendrickson. So no one knew who Ezra Hendrickson was. Most people knew Ezra Jeffers, from going to St. Martin's and friends and stuff like that. So it was a big, kind of uproar in the country, actually. Some people were like, who's this guy? Why are you guys bringing him home? Some people just didn't want what they considered a foreigner to be a part of the team. The team was doing well. But I came and I tried out and became the captain and the rest, as I say, is history. So um, but when I came to St. Vincent, the team was doing well. They had qualified for the Gold Cup, um, but from day one, from my first practice on, I think everyone on the team, even there's a lot of spectators actually came to see like who's this person, and I think I won over a lot of people's hearts from my first practice, because I'm the type of player that when I played, I every practice was like a game to me, and I came with the same spirit, with the same mentality, with the same attitude, as if it was a game, as if it was match day. So I think people took to that, and then once they saw me playing on Israel, they were like, okay, yeah, this guy, he's for real, and became the captain, and played for the nation for 12 years.
The question then would be, how many caps, because that's how they refer it, how many caps have you had for the national team?
I'm not sure. I know I played from '95 to 2006, so a period of
About 11 years.
11 years or so.
And who
Yeah.
are some of your team members throughout that period? And some of the team members that you enjoyed really playing with, you developed a real chemistry with, so that you were able to know what that team member was going to do, and anticipate moves. Who are some of your
Right.
team members, and some of those members who you really enjoyed playing with?
Yeah. So guys like Fitz Bramble, Andre Hines, uh, Cornelius Huggins, Dexter Walker, Otis Blackett, Randy Chung Jack, Kenai, my brother Wesley John, better known as Briscoe John, um, Tusty Marlon, Tusty James. A lot of these guys I played with, and we played on the national team for quite a number of years together. But I made a lot of good friends. Burton Ford. I mean, I hope I'm not missing anyone's names, but those guys from that era,
Okay.
that Vincy Heat era, were some of the guys that I played with on the national team. Um,
Mm,
Vorbin Sutherland was a great defender that I
yeah.
played with also.
I'm glad you mentioned Dexter Walker's name because he's probably on the live itching to ask some questions, and so because he spoke nicely of him, he probably wouldn't ask any questions. So that's very very good. Thank you very much for helping me out there.
Yeah, I know Dexter really well,
Okay, excellent. And I
and
remember watching Dexter play as
he
well.
knows me too.
Okay, okay. So let's talk a little bit about your professional career, and you played for Galaxy for quite a while, and you really stamped your name and your authority um, with the Galaxy. I remember there was one goal that you scored that was played over and over, replayed over and over and over. What was that experience like? You were in the Midwest in Indiana, but you played for New York for a while, but then you went all the way to the West in Los Angeles. What was that like?
So that's when my career really took off. I was in New York. I started in February of '97, and I got transferred to LA in August of that year. So it was a brief stint in New York. But once I got to LA, and I was able to, because as a rookie, it's really hard to get playing time on the pitch. You have to really work really, really hard to get on the pitch. And at the time, the league was new, so most of the older players were getting the opportunity to play. But once I got to LA and I started playing, and then I just started making a name for myself. And I became that overlapping outside back, that overlapping right back that would get forward, that would score goals. And I was able to, win some championships with LA, scored some goals in some major championship games, and the fans took to me, and my celebrations were lively, for lack of a better word. But so it was, my career really. When you think of my career, you think of LA Galaxy. Now I went
Yeah.
on and won championships with DC United and also with the Columbus Crew as players, but as a player. But the heart of the meat of my career was those 7 or 8 year seasons in with the Galaxy.
How many championships overall did you win in while in the MLS?
As a player, three, and as a coach, two.
As a
Part of the
coach?
coaching staff as a assistant coach.
Okay.
So five total.
And in terms of some of the memorable players that you played with, because I remember one time Beckham came to LA when he was finished with his European playing days, because the MLS saw to engage some of those more popular European players towards the end of their days. And so I know that, as I said, Beckham came. So who are some of the bigger names that you played with during your club career?
So Carlos Hermosillo, great Mexican striker. Luis Hernandez, another Mexican striker. He had a really good 1998 World Cup. Mauricio Cienfuegos, El Salvadorian player. Kobe Jones, who's like the
Mm,
poster boy of
yeah,
U.S.
yeah,
soccer at
yes,
the
yes.
time. Alexi Lalas, bearded defender, redhead, American player. So there were a lot of U.S. National team players that I was fortunate to play with. And while I was in New York, I also played with Tab Ramos and Tony Miola and guys like that. So
We have a lot of talent here. You just mentioned that a while ago. Raw talent for some young guys. Why do you think, Ezra, that more of our youngsters aren't transitioning to semi-professional and even professional football in some of the major leagues? We know, as was seen when Jamaica was here, Jamaicans play semi-pro. They have people as far as Saudi Arabia. The notable ones were Reed and
Bailey,
what's his name from
Bailey,
Jamaica,
Bailey.
Bailey. Absent was Antonio because
Yeah.
of his accident. What is it about St. Vincent and the Grenadines, do you think, what do we need to do or what aren't we doing to have all talented youngsters transition to semi-pro and even professional football?
I think so. It's a combination of things, but it all boils down to lack of exposure. For me, I think the inability for us to play a lot of games, friendly games where players could be seen, um, I think is the major part of it. Um, because I think, I don't think, I know that the talent is here. I've worked with these guys now since August, and you see what we were able to do against the Jamaicans. Um, and I think if we can get these players more exposed, all right, it would be better twofold. The players, they get seen by scouts, universities, um, be it professional scouts, and also when they do get a contract, or if they get to go to college and they train at a high level every day, or train at a professional level at every day, then they become better, and St. Vincent become better, and then now St. Vincent is playing in a lot more games with high exposure. So now getting into this Gold Cup would have been massive for some of these young players. We have we had a player 19 years old start against Jamaica in the second game, you know, and a couple other 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds. I mean, the team is very, very young. So if we can get these guys to be seen by these scouts, and with me now, with my network being so large, I can help in that aspect. But it's honest on the federation to make sure that we get a lot more games, so the team becomes better. So we don't have some of the lapses that we saw in the fall against El Salvador at home, or a couple of Fridays ago against Jamaica, where we tied that, allowed them to tie the game in the last 30 seconds. I think if players play a lot more, they'll be more composed, and things like that won't happen. So it's twofold: getting games. Your players become better. Your players are more accustomed to certain match states. 30 seconds to go, you're at home, you're up 1-0. How do you see out the game? And then, you get the exposure where, a lot of these games are carried live, streamed live or on television, and scouts can watch and see players and gain interest in players. So I think that's where we start, is that we need to, it's not easy. It's some financial investment that's going to have to happen, but I think we need to find a way to get our players to be seen more, so that we can get players out, so they become better, and then the team as a whole become better. Because these most, if not all, of these Jamaican players are playing at a high level, being coached professionally on a daily basis, and then we're asking our guys who are not in the same excuse me, predicament, to now go out and match up against these guys. Now, got to tip my hat off to these guys. These players really, really came out, even in both games, and stuck to the game plan. Unfortunately, we let that first game get away from us, so it put control of the series back into their hands, and instead of them going back to Jamaica, being down 1-0, being down 3 points, having to come out and win the game, they were able to, didn't have to do anything. If that game had tied the second game 0-0, they still would have gone through. So they had no pressure on them. So we kind of let them off the hook those last 30 seconds of that first game. But these are things that players will learn, will get better at with experience. That's what it's going to take. A coach, it doesn't matter who it is. A coach come in and can have the best tactical game plan. At some point, it's going to come down to individual decisions. It's going to come down to players being comfortable being in certain game state and knowing what to do, knowing how to see out games, or knowing how to chase after a game. Because even in that second game, still at 1-0 in the 89, 87, 88 minute or so, we still have a very good opportunity to get that tying goal and reverse what they did to us 4 days earlier. But we gave up an own goal, and then it just kind of got away from us. But these are things that you can only change with more friendlies, more competitive matches, uh, to so the players can gain experience and become better.
You made a very important point, Ezra, and I made that point the same night when we played Jamaica. I was at VJ's just about as the match was about to start, and I remember saying to some folk who were there that look, our guys are asked to compete against a team where almost everyone plays either semi-professional or professional football, and it's unfair. But I thought that they held their own really well, especially in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And like you said, should have won the game. We've been going for a while, Ezra. So I want to take a quick break, just about for a minute or so that you could sip your coffee a bit more, and then we come back and we chat a little bit more because I think I want to compare and contrast your experience as a footballer and what you're seeing now in terms of facilities and so forth. So don't go anywhere. And those of you on the live, please stick around. We still have a few more minutes to go as we chat with the coach of Vincy Heat, Team SVG, Mr. Ezra Hendrickson. Don't worry, we'll be right back.
Covering 150 years of history, relating the story of 5 generations. It took 12 years to write, and now it's finally here. The story of Pauline Bramble, Springs, Blossoms, and Young Thorns, a literary masterpiece by Dr. Richard A. Byron Cox, author of the critically acclaimed Where Mama Stares in Vain. Pauline Bramble's story is your great-great-grandparents, great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, and your story. It is our story of pain, love, tears, and joys, our story of struggle with no surrender. It's a golden gift to our nation as we mark 45 years of independence. Get your copy and a gift for a friend for this independence from Games Bookshop, Career City Store, Giggles at AIA, and Jazzy's at the Cruise Ship Berth. It is our story like never told before. The story of Pauline Bramble. Read it and be inspired.
The story of Pauline Bramble. If you haven't gotten your copy yet, the book written by my friend Richard Byron Cox, if you haven't had your copy as yet, please go out and get yourself a copy of that book. It's fantastic reading. I can say so myself. So go get a copy. It's everything that the ad says it is and more. All right. So we're chatting with Ezra, the coach of Vincy Heat, and we're talking about his own experience as a footballer, because that's the thing. He is a footballer he, and he transitioned into management. And so he's here with us, uh, chatting, and we talk more with him about his experience. You know, Ezra, I don't know if it's a compliment or what, right? But there is something about you that reminds me of Patrick Vieira. I don't know if anybody have ever told you that. Anyone has ever told you that? But you have a Patrick Vieira vibe about you, and I like Patrick, by the way. He came to NYCFC for a small stint. Didn't do a bad job. So I just find when I look at you, I see Patrick Vieira. You know what I mean. I don't know if
Well,
anyone has ever told you that.
no, but I'm a big Arsenal fan, so anything to compare me to any Arsenal player, for me is a positive.
All
I
right.
sense I sense you're not an Arsenal fan.
No, sorry,
No.
sorry.
Who's your team?
I got into football at the time when, well, I should say English football, because growing up, actually, as you mentioned that, growing up as a teenager in the late 80s, early 90s, I was more into Serie A, and I was a AC Milan fan with Marco van Basten, with Hullit, Frank Rijkaard, and those guys.
All right,
So that was
okay.
the team I looked at for a while until later on in this millennium, is this century that I started to look at English football around the Mourinho Chelsea era,
Okay.
and I can't help but love Didier Drogba. So sorry,
You're blue.
yeah, yeah. So I'm blue 100%. Um, as well, so you played in St. Vincent at a time when there was Victoria Park as the main home of football, and there was Annesville that was enlightened. Uh, how do you compare the facilities that you played on then and what footballers now and the national team now throughout the country are now playing on? And do you see that impacting in any way the quality of football St. Vincent and Grenadines produces?
Yes. So I think the facilities have gotten better. Um, there are more lighted fields, which is a plus. Um, just for the mere fact of if you start a game back in my time, or even 10 years ago or so, uh, 4 o'clock, 4:15, whatever have you, by 5:30 or so, it's dark and the match is pretty over. It's pretty much over. You can't play when you didn't have access to lighted fields. I think just Victoria was the lighted field. Most matches in St. Vincent didn't last 90 minutes. And then when you count throw-ins and the ball go in the river and you have to go find the ball and stuff like that, most players you'll play a game probably 50 to 60 minutes total. So you were never getting match fit to go play. So now when you go play in, let's say, the Gold Cup, or you're going to play in an actual game against Jamaica in Jamaica, and it's a 90-minute game. If you've never played a 90-minute game for your life, or for that year, or for the training games leading up to that game, it becomes difficult because your body is not conditioned for 90 minutes. So that's a big plus, having these lights. I mean, even at the training center in Brighton where we train, we're able to train at night. It's no longer okay at 6 o'clock. There's no lights. You have to end training. So that's a big plus because players are now more conditioned to playing, for a longer period of time because we have, more lighted fields now. And there still can be more. Like I said, developing football is not going to be cheap. It's going to take some investment, but we have to see, the positives in investing financially in our youth, in our sports. Look at the game on Friday that we played against Jamaica in St. Vincent. Although we tied that game, it felt like a loss. Everyone in those stands was just shocked. But however, the feedback that you got after, people just, the pride, we were very proud people as Vincentians. And to hear people express how proud they are of the team and the progress that we're making and stuff like that, we can see how, sports, and in this instance, football could uplift, our country, our nation. And that's something that, you know, the federation, the private sector, the government, everyone has to buy into uh, to try to, do whatever we can as a people, as a nation, because we have a good product. Especially now, this team, like I mentioned to you, of the 11 starters, only 4 were over 25.
Mm.
So it's a very young team. They've grown in bonds, like from August last year to now, how much they've grown, the progress they've made, and they have so much. They're just barely tapping into their talent. So I think, you know people invest in, making sure we have more lighted fields, so guys can play for a longer time, so we can have night games, so you're not playing at 3:30 in your local league, and then your games are at night. You're not conditioned to the different climate, the different temperatures and stuff like that. All these stuff plays into it. Getting bigger fields, so that you're not playing on a 70 by 110 field all year, and then it's a CONCACAF match, and FIFA says no, it's got to be 76 by 116 or something. So you got that difference in the the size of the pitch. Every little thing like that helps and gets you more prepared for when you get into these World Cup qualifying, these Gold Cup qualifying, et cetera, et cetera. So I think um, there have been some improvement in the pitches, but I think a lot more can be done, and it's going to take everyone working together and seeing the benefits of having a very good national team.
In terms of the structure of football, the way it's played, do you see any potential here for a well structured national type of tournament where you have the structure where you have different divisions, but the clubs having teams at different divisions, and it being done nationally, as opposed to the Central Leeward League, the Mespo League, the Georgetown League, and all of these leagues. Do you see, first of all, the benefits of doing a well structured, even if it's a semi professional setup nationally? Or do you think having these leagues throughout the country independently exposes more and brings out more of our talent from the local areas?
Well, I think a national tournament would benefit. Um, my biggest thing, though, is that what I see in St. Vincent, I think the coaching education has to become forefront, as in we need to have players. So we have players, and we have players 13, 14 years old that show talent, show they have the abilities, but they need coaches who are certified, coaches who have been uh, through some sort of a course, through FIFA or CONCACAF, what have you, because in order for someone, a coach, to nurture that player and to really um, teach that player the finer things about the game. Yes, it's good to have experience. It's good to have someone that's played the game before, but unless it's like going to a university. So I could be um, a good architect. I could draw some good drawings and stuff like that. But until I go to a university and I hone those skills and I get better and I learn to do CAD and stuff like that, then I probably won't reach my full potential. So I think right now what we're lacking in Stevenson is, I don't think we have enough certified, qualified coaches to help, make this product that we have, these young quality players, better. Um, and if we get that, we won't have to send so many players outside, to get that training. We can have people here within the country that can do that. But that's something that the federation has to take upon themselves, and get FIFA or CONCACAF or whoever in here to to do these courses, so these coaches can get better, so they can in turn better coach or better prepare teams and players, because player development, it's one thing to say yes, we need to play more games, but if you're just playing more games and you're not playing it the correct way, or you don't have a tactical clue as to what it is that's going to take um, to go up against, let's say, a Jamaica or something like that, then it becomes difficult for the players. It becomes frustrated, because even though you say, "Man, we have so much talent, but we can't do anything." You need someone who's able to make sure they bring that group of quality individuals together and play a tactical game. I think that's one of the things that the fans of Vincy Heat now are appreciating, is that they can see an actual style. They can see that we're trying to play a certain way, and they can see that even though it's Jamaica that we're coming up against, and everyone thought, oh, there's going to be 6-0, 7-0. We didn't park the bus and hope for some counter. We played a very, very tactical game. We nullified Gray and Bailey, who were the two main threats on the wings, and was able to instill our game plan on them, because we didn't go out there, fearing Jamaica. We were at home. We're like, we're going to take it to them. We're going to press them. We press them on all their goal kicks, and we're able to get a turnover to get our goal. But it's just a little savvy, a little inexperience that we missed at the end of that, especially that first game. Because I think this series was lost in those last 30 seconds of that first game.
Okay.
If I'm going to be honest with you.
All right, I have you for a few more minutes, and I'm going to allow some questions from some individuals on the live. Somebody asked, "What's next for Vincy Heat?" And while you're thinking of that question, or you're answering that question, I also want to find out from you, who are some of your influences rather, in coaching. I should have asked the same thing in football, but whether it's a Pep Guardiola or a Jurgen Klopp or some of the older coaches, my personal favorite, as you mentioned, Pat, the boss is Jose Mourinho. And listen to me, you're not going to stop. You're not going to get me to stop back in Mourinho. But who are some of your influences in coaching? And like I said, somebody asked, oh, what's next for Vincy Heat?
So first, let's talk about next for Vincy Heat. We have World Cup qualifying coming up on June 4th. We play Anguilla in St. Vincent, and then on June 10th we go to Puerto Rico to play Puerto Rico. These are the last two matches of our four-match group. Prior to me joining the team, we played the first two games back in June of last year, which we lost both. So it's gonna be a difficult task, but we still have two games to play, and we want to go out and really put on a good show, and then see what happens, because there's still a possibility, though slight, that we can still go through, because the top two teams from each group goes through, and depending on what happens with the other games, as long as we take care of those two games, we could be moving on to the next round. So it's not going to be an easy task, but I mean, with the progress that we're making, we're expected to win both of those games. So we'll see what happens with that. As far as influences, in my profession, it doesn't matter how you twist it, how you turn it. It's all about results, right?
Yes.
And when I think about influences, when I think about coaches that I look up to, I must say that Ferguson, Sir Alex, is someone that I've met, I was able to have dinner with, pick his brain a little bit. I would say that he's someone that, because he did what you're supposed to do in this profession, which is win, because his coaching was so result oriented. I think that's someone that, if I want to say someone that I look at and say, man, I want to be like that person, that's someone. But as far as personally, like someone that I spend more time with, Ziggy Schmid, great German coach, German American coach that, he coached me with the LA Galaxy, and then he coached me with Columbus Crew. I was his assistant in Seattle. He started the Seattle Sounders in 2009, brought me in as his assistant. And then again with LA Galaxy, I was his assistant. I was able to coach Zlatan Ibrahimovic there in LA. That's a story in itself. And so Ziggy is someone that, who I, experience more as far as who I learned from more when we talk about coaches. And then I spent some time here with Brian Smetzer in Seattle. Once he took over from Ziggy, and he's also a big influence. And then Caleb Porter, I was his assistant in Columbus from 2019 to 2021 before I took the Chicago job. So I've tapped into a lot of coaches. Those three coaches in particular that I worked under, a lot of my philosophy is a mix of all three of them. And then, there's always the Bruce Arenas and guys like that you try to ask questions about certain aspects of the game. I actually was fortunate to sit down and talk with Wilfred Nancy, who's now at Columbus Crew, and also Patrick Vieira when he was at NYCFC. So there's a lot of coaches that I've either spoken to and kind of picked their brain, or I've actually worked with that kind of mold me as a coach, as far as my philosophy and my style of play and how I form my game model.
Okay. Someone on the live is saying that they believe that the players must be registered with a club and they should only play where the club is playing and not be going from team to team in different leagues, because among other things that can lead to significant injuries. Your comment on that, as well as a final question, because I'm going to let you go and we're coming to the end of the program. What would be your ultimate achievement as head coach of Vincy Heat?
So first, let me tackle that first question. It is an issue when players are jumping from team to team, but as the way things are right now, with players, not being paid and stuff like that, if let's say I'm playing for a team in Layou and a team from Kingston wants me to come and play, they say, hey, I'm going to give you 300 EC. I'm a 19, 20-year-old kid. I have no means of income. It's hard to tell that player not to go and play that game or play for that team. So the way it's structured right now, it's difficult to control, because players have to do, what's in their best interest. And as a coach, as fans, we want to see players stick to one team, play in one league. But until these players are being, getting paid or having some form of income from doing that, it's really hard to, to monitor that and regulate that. Right. So a lot of things has to change in the structure of football in the country before you can really demand or put any kind of restrictions, any kind of regulations on players. And then ultimately for me, when I
Yeah.
look at Vincy Heat, I see with the new structure of FIFA and the World Cup and the expanded number of teams, I don't think that it'd be too far fetched for St. Vincent and the Grenadines to be competing in the 2030 World Cup. I think if, you know, this is, some what, 5 years down the road, but I think if we plan correctly, and I've worked with the federation with a 4-year plan that's in place, um, and hopefully we can stick to this and it can be done. And whether or not, because coaches come and go, God forbid this happens, but let's say the federation was to sack me. I would hope that things will continue in the same manner, or the progress will continue. Because I think, like I said, 7 starters being 25 or younger, and the team playing at such a high level against such a difficult opponent in Jamaica, I think we should plan on making sure that come qualifications for 2030, St. Vincent and the Grenadines is a team that everyone in CONCACAF is talking about, and everyone is wondering, where is this team coming from? How is these guys, they're at the top of CONCACAF vying for a spot in the 2030 World Cup. So I think ultimately for me, accomplishing that for this small nation would be something that we all would remember for the rest of our lives. It'd be a big thing for the nation, and it can be done. With the expanded field, it can be done.
All right. Ezra, let me thank you so much for stopping by and staying up late with Sion Marshall tonight. I'm sure that those who have been watching, who are watching, whether on Facebook or on YouTube, enjoyed the conversation, learned a lot, and found your thoughts quite insightful. There's so much more we can talk about, but and I'm going to tell you this: Vincentians heard it. They want to see, and we are supporting you 100%. We want to see SBG on the world stage at the 2030 World Cup. And that's a movement that we're starting today, right here, right now. Well, you started before that, but at least in the minds of those watching, it has been implanted. The movement right now is for St. Vincent and the Grenadines to be at the 2030 World Cup. Coach, I wish you every success for the team. I wish the team all the best. We look forward to seeing St. Vincent and the Grenadines play. I think you said Puerto Rico and Anguilla here.
Yes. Anguilla here on
Yes,
the 4th, and then we go to Puerto Rico on the
Puerto
10th.
Rico. And
That's
I
good.
hope that the support that the team got versus Jamaica, I see similar support out at Annisville when Anguilla comes. And all the best to you, all the best to the team going forward. And thank you so much for being on our program this evening.
Well, yes, I want to thank you for having me. I want to thank the listening public, the audience. And yes, I'm a big believer of, if you can believe it, you can achieve it. So that 2030 thing is not just something that I'm just throwing out there. I've played with some of the top players in CONCACAF. I've worked with some of them, and I know that the players that we have here and the development that's possible here in St. Vincent, that 2030 is a high possibility. We just have to make sure we start planning now for it and not just wait till that time. So thanks again for having me. Anytime you want to have me on, just hit me up, and I'll be willing to come on and share anything. And if the people want to know about my style of play, I could show my game model, anything, just to educate the public about what goes into a match, or what is it that we do, and when you see what you see on the field, how does that all come together? I'm open to educating the public about how that comes about.
And I am going to take you up on that. You can be assured that you'll be invited on this program again. Thank you so much, Ezra. Have a good
Thank you
evening.
very much. Bye.
That was head coach of Vincy Heat, The team that we all love and support, Mr. Ezra Hendrickson, Layu native, who went out, did major things, and is now back giving full effort, support, and service to his country. Thank you so much for watching. It's another Thursday night, and you are the reason why we do this. Until next Thursday, when I am back with another edition of Uplitzy and Marshall. Good night.